Before you say anything to your anxious child, I want you to do two things. Take 2 slow breaths and drop your shoulders. Your child's nervous system is reading your nervous system, and your calm is actually the intervention that matters the most, more than anything else you can say. I'm Dr. Todd, and I've been working with anxious kids for 30 years, and I'm going to show you exactly how to help your child and what you can do starting today. Anxiety shows up differently in every kid, but the pattern underneath is almost always the same. I'm working with a family right now whose child hasn't been to school in a year. They've tried everything: rewards, therapy, being supportive and understanding, and it's only gotten worse. This child now has multiple meltdowns a day over everything, and the parents are so exhausted and confused because they feel like they've done everything right. What I told them in our last session is the same thing I'm going to tell you today. There are 3 shifts that change everything when you're raising an anxious child. The first is learning to regulate yourself before you try to help them. The second is stopping the habit of rescuing them from their discomfort. And the third is building what I call an exposure ladder. And that one is a game changer. Shift number 1 is learning to regulate yourself first. Your kid's nervous system does not operate on its own. They literally borrow regulation from the stable people around them. Think about a toddler who trips and falls, and then they look up at your face before deciding whether or not they're going to cry. If you look panicked, they will cry. If you look calm, they'll shake it off and keep going. That is co-regulation in its simplest form. Your nervous system is setting the temperature for the whole room. So let's say you're at a school drop-off and they're feeling really anxious about the separation. If you're anxious about their nervousness, your body will probably be sending a message that contradicts any kind of reassurance you might be saying with words. So if you're reassuring them that they're going to be okay, they still will sense your anxiety and your worry. And then they will decide that if you're this stressed about their stress, something must actually be wrong. This is why it always has to begin with you. 2 slow breaths, soften your face, drop your shoulders. And this isn't just an act. You actually have to try and find some calm within you, because kids can tell if you're not. This is the first real thing that will reach them. Now, shift number 2 is the harder shift, because this feels unkind in the moment because you're going to stop rescuing them. Your child is melting down, begging to stay home, and every instinct you have might be to make their pain stop. And honestly, part of what you're doing when you rescue them is also rescuing yourself, because it's genuinely painful to watch our kids struggle. Pulling them back from whatever scary thing they're facing will make our own distress vanish. And let me tell you what's happening in their brain every time we do that. When we rescue them, we are confirming that their fear was justified. We're teaching them that the only way to feel safe is to avoid whatever it is that's hard. And that's when their world starts to shrink, because what starts out as a fear of school can morph into a fear of other things, like birthday parties or the cafeteria or anywhere they might feel anxiety in their body. Avoidance feels like relief in the short term, but it actually feeds the anxiety long term. And here's the part that I call a relief trap. When you give in and let your child stay home or sleep in your bed or skip the party, you feel something too. Your own distress drops immediately because the crying stops and the tension in the room dissolves. And for a moment, everybody feels better. That feeling is actually real and is biological. Your brain registers it as a success, like you've solved the problem. But what just happened in your child's brain is the opposite of what happened in your brain. Their amygdala, which is the part of the brain that sends alarms, that just got confirmation that the threat was real. You wouldn't have pulled them back if it wasn't real. So next time, that alarm will fire faster and louder because the brain now has evidence that the scary thing really was dangerous. And your relief became their reinforcement. This is why anxiety can escalate even when parents are doing everything out of love. The more consistently you rescue, the more you are, without meaning to, teaching their nervous system that it cannot cope without you. This is not necessarily a character flaw in you, but it is a biological trap, and most parents don't see it. It's important to remember that in working with anxious kids, the goal is not to eliminate the fear, but rather it's to teach them that they can feel scared and still be okay. So you can name what you see. You can say, hey, I can see you're scared right now. You don't argue it. You don't logic your way out of this. You just say it. And then you hold the boundary with warmth. That's what's critical. You will say, school still happens. Bedtime still happens. You can say, I know this is hard, but we are still doing this. And your body can stay calm while you say that. The family that I mentioned, this mom had started doing her own breathing before they even got out of the car. Dad stopped going back into the bedroom every few minutes at night and started sitting calmly just outside the door. The meltdowns kept happening, but they were getting shorter. And that was this boy's nervous system starting to trust that the adults around it are stable. When you stay calm and steady, your child finally has something solid to build their confidence on. Once you're regulated and holding the boundary with warmth, you can start building what I call an exposure ladder. This is where you take the thing that scares your child and you break it down into small steps, small enough that each step feels like a little bit of a stretch, but it's not too overwhelming. Here's what's actually happening in the brain when you do this. Your child's amygdala, that's that part of the brain that fires the alarms, cannot tell the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So it'll treat school the same way it would treat a rattlesnake. Every time your child avoids going to school, their brain gets a sense of relief and it learns, hey, I was right to be afraid. And that avoidance actually confirms the false alarm. Only way to retrain that alarm system is through repeated, successful exposure. You have to give the brain new evidence, and you do that one small step at a time. That's the exposure ladder. With many families I've worked with, we don't start by putting the child back in the classroom for a full day. That's way too fast. Instead, we start by having her get dressed in her school clothes and just sit on the couch at home. That might be the whole task and nothing more. Then we might move to sitting in the car with the engine off, just holding her backpack. Later, we drive to school and sit in the parking lot for 2 minutes. After that, we walk to the front entrance and touch the door. Then we stepped inside the lobby for 60 seconds, and then we'd leave. Each step teaches the brain something that avoidance never could. It teaches the brain that I felt scared, but I did that thing anyways, and nothing bad happened. That is how we rebuild confidence, not through pep talks, but through evidence. Now, let's say a step is too hard. You do not quit. You just find a smaller step. There is always a smaller step, and that's the whole point of the exposure ladder. You can apply this same logic anywhere anxiety shows up. If your child freezes when a server asks their order at a restaurant, you don't force a full conversation on day one. The first goal might just be having them stay at the table without hiding behind your arm. Next time they can point to a picture on the menu. Another time they tell you what they want and you can say it out loud to the server. Then later they say just one word, burger, pizza, directly to the server. Later they use a full sentence and then say thank you when the food arrives. All you're doing is stacking small wins until their nervous system stops reading the restaurant as a threat. You are essentially building their bravery muscle one rep at a time. This is exactly how we treat anxiety in the therapy office, and it's exactly how you can do it at home. Now, there's a place where many parents accidentally undo all of this work, and it happens with the language you use. When your child is scared and you say, hey, you'll be fine, it's not a big deal, I promise nothing bad will happen, that is reassuring them, and it feels like you're being kind when you do that, but what it actually communicates is that their fear is wrong, and they need you to make it go away. So you're reinforcing the idea that the feeling itself is the problem, and over time, that makes them more dependent on you to manage their anxiety. What works instead is validation paired with confidence. You acknowledge the fear and you hold the belief firmly that they can handle it. So you can say something like, hey, I know this feels really hard right now, and you're capable of doing hard things. Or you could say, your body is telling you this is scary and that feeling is real, but we're still going to do this. So you see, you're not arguing with the fear. You're not promising it's going to go away. You're just standing next to them while they walk through it. Before any scary event, you could also walk through what's going to happen. You could say, hey, tomorrow morning, we're going to go pull up to school, and you might feel that tight feeling in your chest. That's okay. That's just your alarm going off. We will take 3 breaths together, and then you'll open the door, and I'll be here when school ends. So you're not surprising them. There's no unknowns. You're just providing a clear map of what's coming. A lot of times with anxiety, it feeds on the unknown. So when you remove that unknown, you take away a lot of the fuel. There's one more thing I want you to know. It usually gets a lot harder before it gets easier. The protests get more dramatic when you first stop rescuing and start holding the line. All that is their nervous system testing whether you really mean it. All I want you to do is stay steady and firm. Think warm and firm, even through the meltdown. And the shift for them will start happening in no time. Here's what I want you to do this week. Pick one small thing your child is avoiding. Don't pick their biggest fear. Just pick something that's manageable. Maybe it's sleeping in their own bed for a night. Maybe it's saying hi to one new person. Then I want you to regulate yourself first. After that, walk them through the plan and hold the line with warmth. Afterward, you can celebrate their attempt. You can say, hey, you did that even though it was scary. That is courage. Your child's anxiety is not a life sentence. It's just a nervous system that needs to be taught, and you are the teacher. If you want to go deeper on this, I've built a course called Connection and Credibility, specifically for parents who want to be that steady, regulated anchor for their child while staying warm and connected at the same time. You can find it at drtoddtalks.com. I also have tons of free videos, articles, and podcast episodes on my YouTube channel, my podcast, and my website, and that will help you start. Leave a comment below and tell me what's going on with your family. I read every single one of them. All right, I'll see you next time.